The text message appeared on my screen at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, when most people were already lost in dreams. But not Jessica. My golden child sister had a talent for timing her bombs perfectly. Hey Maya. Such exciting news. Derek proposed, and we've set our wedding date for June 15th. Can't wait to celebrate together as a family. XOXO. June 15th. My wedding date. The date I'd announced 6 months ago. The date that had been circled on our family calendar in Mom's handwriting since Christmas. I stared at the blue glow of my phone, watching those words reshape everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. The silence of my apartment wrapped around me like a second skin. No roommates to witness this moment. No partner to comfort me since my fiancé, Marcus, was out of town on business. Just me and the truth, sitting in the darkness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. 28 years of being the overlooked daughter had taught me the power of patience. 28 years of watching Jessica claim every spotlight, every holiday dinner conversation, every proud parental moment. And now this. I typed 2 words. I understand. The phone buzzed immediately. Jessica, probably expecting drama, probably ready for the fight that would paint me as the jealous, bitter sister once again. Really? You're not upset? Mom was worried you might be. Not at all. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks. You're the best. Can't wait to see your dress. Maybe we can coordinate colors so we don't clash in photos. I set the phone face down on my nightstand and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Nashville hummed with its usual restless energy. Somewhere out there, in their suburban home with the perfectly manicured lawn, my parents were probably celebrating Jessica's news. Planning. Prioritizing. Choosing. Have you ever had that moment when you realized your family's love came with conditions? Drop a comment and tell me about a time someone underestimated your quiet strength. I read every single one. The next morning brought coffee and clarity in equal measure. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, scrolling through my wedding planning folder. 6 months of careful coordination, vendor deposits, invitation designs. All for June 15th. Mom called at precisely 9 a.m., her voice carrying that careful tone she used when she needed to deliver unwelcome news gently. Maya, sweetie, we need to talk about the wedding situation. What situation? I asked, though we both knew. Well, Jessica's date. It's the same as yours, and Derek's family is flying in from California, and his grandmother is 92, and this might be her last chance to see him married. The familiar script. The golden child's needs trumping mine, wrapped in reasonable explanations that somehow always led to the same conclusion. We'll still come to yours, of course, Mom continued, but we might need to leave early to make it to Jessica's ceremony. It starts at 4 and yours is at 2, so if we just slip out during your reception. I traced patterns on my placemat with my finger, each swirl a meditation in restraint. Or, she added hopefully, maybe you could consider moving your date? I know it's short notice, but Jessica's deposit is non-refundable, and you've always been so flexible. I understand, I said again, those 2 words becoming my shield and my sword. Oh, good. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Jessica was so worried, but I told her you're not the type to cause drama over something like this. After she hung up, I remained at my table for a long time. The morning light shifted across my apartment, illuminating the stack of wedding magazines I'd been collecting, the color swatches taped to my refrigerator, the engagement photos Marcus and I had taken in Centennial Park last fall. Then I opened my laptop and began making calls. The first was to Vivian Chun, event planner to Nashville's elite. We'd worked together 3 years ago when I'd coordinated the charity auction for the Children's Hospital, back when I was still trying to prove my worth through volunteer work and quiet competence. Maya Rodriguez. How wonderful to hear from you. I heard congratulations are in order. They are. And I need your help with something unusual. I'm listening. I need to transform a small chapel wedding into something unforgettable. Money is no object, discretion is essential, and I have exactly 10 weeks. Vivian's pause spoke volumes. In the event planning world, 10 weeks was a heartbeat. But Vivian Chen hadn't built her reputation by backing down from challenges. What kind of unforgettable are we talking about? I smiled for the first time since receiving Jessica's text. The kind that makes headlines. The next call went to my best friend Rachel, who worked in publicity for Sony Music Nashville. Then to my college roommate Kim, now a talent agent in Los Angeles. Then to Marcus's business partner James, whose wife hosted a weekly lifestyle show on the local ABC affiliate. Each conversation was brief, purposeful, and concluded with the same request. I need this kept completely confidential until June 15th. By Thursday, my phone was buzzing with returned calls from people whose names I'd only whispered about attending other people's events. By Friday, I was sitting in meetings with vendors who typically required 6-month advance bookings, but were suddenly finding gaps in their schedules. The beauty of flying under the radar for 28 years was that no one expected Maya Rodriguez to have connections. Quiet Maya, reliable Maya, flexible Maya who never asked for much and always understood when family plans changed to accommodate Jessica's needs. But quiet didn't mean powerless. It meant careful. It meant observant. It meant accumulating favors and friendships while everyone else was watching the show. Marcus returned from his business trip Sunday evening to find our apartment transformed into a war room of wedding planning. Fabric samples covered every surface, vendor contracts organized in neat stacks, and 3 different seating charts spread across our dining room table. "Babe," he said, setting down his suitcase. "What's all this?" I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing the final guest list that had grown from our original 50 people to just over 200. "Plan B," I said simply. He knew about Jessica's date announcement. I'd called him Tuesday night after Mom's conversation. He'd been furious, ready to book a flight home immediately to confront my family. But I'd asked him to trust me, to let me handle this my way. Now, seeing the scope of what I'd orchestrated in 5 days, his expression shifted from confusion to admiration to something that looked like awe. "Maya, what have you done?" I handed him the revised guest list. His eyes widened as he scanned the names. Country music stars he'd grown up listening to. Local news anchors. The mayor's wife. 3 members of the Nashville City Council. The owner of the Titans. 2 best-selling authors. The chef from that restaurant we'd tried to get reservations at for 2 years. "How did you?" "I've been paying attention," I said. While Jessica was busy being the center of attention, I was busy becoming someone people wanted to know. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of being overlooked had taught me to see everything. Every connection, every opportunity, every thread that could be woven into something larger when the time was right. Wednesday morning brought a call from the florist, confirming the delivery of white orchids and eucalyptus arrangements that would transform the small chapel into something from a fairy tale. Thursday, the photographer called to confirm she'd cleared her entire schedule for our event. Friday, the caterer sent photos of the tasting menu that made my mouth water. But the call that changed everything came Saturday morning. "Maya? This is Charlotte Brennan from Good Morning Nashville. We heard there might be an interesting story happening at Belmead Chapel next Saturday. Care to comment?" My blood went cold. Someone had leaked information about the wedding. In a town like Nashville, secrets had shelf lives measured in hours, not weeks. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said carefully. "Our sources indicate quite a few notable figures have RSVPs for an event next weekend. The same weekend as another high-profile wedding across town. Sounds like a story to me." I closed my eyes, weighing options in the space between heartbeats. This was the moment that would define everything: retreat back to quiet Maya who never made waves, or lean into the storm I'd been carefully creating. "If you're planning to cover the event," I said slowly, "I'd appreciate discretion until after the ceremony." "Of course. This is shaping up to be quite a weekend for Nashville weddings, isn't it?" After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen holding my coffee cup with both hands, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. There would be no going back now. No quiet slip into the shadows while Jessica claimed her spotlight. Marcus found me there an hour later, staring out the window at the city that was about to witness the transformation of overlooked Maya into someone impossible to ignore. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. I turned to look at him, this man who'd seen my worth when my own family had trouble finding it, who'd proposed to me not because I was the loudest voice in the room, but because I was the most thoughtful, who'd supported every dream I'd shared and helped me believe in dreams I'd been too scared to voice. "No," I said. "I'm done being small to make other people comfortable." Sunday night, my phone rang with Mom's number. "Maya, sweetheart, I just heard the strangest thing from Carol Mitchell. She said there's been some excitement around town about your wedding next weekend." "Has there?" I kept my voice neutral, though my heart was racing. "She mentioned something about celebrities? But that can't be right, can it? I mean, your guest list is just family and close friends." "You'll find out Saturday," I said. "Well, remember we'll need to leave early for Jessica's ceremony. Her photographer wants to start family photos at 3:30, so we'll probably need to slip out of your reception around 3. "I understand." Those words again. But this time, they carried a different weight. This time, I truly did understood that some people would always see me as supporting cast in their story. Understood that earning respect sometimes required taking it. Understood that silence could be the most powerful sound in the world when it finally broke. Tuesday brought the final confirmations. Wednesday, the rehearsal dinner that Marcus and I kept deliberately small, just as family, who'd driven down from Kentucky, and Rachel and Kim who'd flown in to stand beside me on the day that would rewrite everything. Thursday night, Jessica called. "Maya, I just want to say thank you again for being so understanding about the date thing. I know it wasn't ideal, but Derek's family situation is just so complicated, and you've always been better at rolling with changes than I am." "Of course," I said, watching the sunset paint Nashville in shades of gold through my apartment window. "Mom mentioned people around town are talking about your wedding? That's so sweet that your friends are excited for you. I'm sure it'll be lovely." "I hope so." "Well, I should let you get your beauty sleep. Big day tomorrow." "Yes," I agreed. "It certainly is." Friday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The story had broken. Nashville's wedding of the year. Local healthcare administrator's surprise celebrity guest list has city talking. The article, which had appeared on the front page of the Nashville Scenes website, featured photos of Belle Meade Chapel decorated with the elaborate floral arrangements, quotes from anonymous sources about the unexpected star power attending the ceremony, and speculation about how quiet Maya Rodriguez had assembled such an impressive guest list. My phone buzzed with Jessica's number. "Maya, what the hell is going on? Mom is freaking out. There are pictures of your wedding venue online, and it looks like something from a magazine. And people are saying celebrities are coming? Why didn't you tell us?" "You didn't ask," I said simply. But this doesn't make sense. How did you? I mean, where did you get the money for all this? And how do you even know these people?" "Jessica, I have to go. My hair appointment is in 20 minutes. "Maya, wait." But I'd already ended the call. The transformation was beginning, and I had no time for explanations that should have been unnecessary. If my family had been paying attention for the past 28 years, they'd know exactly how Maya Rodriguez had learned to move through the world with quiet purpose. Saturday morning arrived with perfect June weather, clear skies, gentle breeze, and the kind of golden sunlight that photographers dream about. I woke up in the hotel suite Rachel had insisted on booking, surrounded by my bridesmaids who'd spent the night celebrating with champagne and stories about all the ways this day would be perfect. At 11 a.m., my phone rang with Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad's number. Another voicemail. Then Jessica again. Finally, Marcus picked up my phone. "Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez? This is Marcus. Maya's getting ready and can't come to the phone right now, but she wanted me to let you know that Belle Meade Chapel is located at 110 Leake Avenue, and the ceremony begins promptly at 2 o'clock. See you there." He hung up and looked at me in the mirror, where the makeup artist was applying the final touches to my face. "They sound stressed," he said diplomatically. "They're realizing they might have miscalculated," I replied. By 1:30, Belmead Chapel looked like something from a dream. White orchids cascaded from every surface, string quartet music floated through the air, and a red carpet stretched from the chapel doors to the street, where photographers were already gathering. The guest list had expanded beyond even my wildest planning. Word had spread through Nashville's interconnected social circles, and people who'd received last-minute invitations were arriving in designer gowns and expensive suits, turning my wedding into the social event of the season. At 1:45, I watched from the bridal suite window as a familiar SUV pulled into the chapel parking lot. Mom and Dad emerged first, both overdressed in outfits clearly chosen for Jessica's more formal venue. Then Jessica herself, still in her hair appointment curlers, followed by Derek looking confused and slightly overwhelmed. They stood in the parking lot for a full minute, staring at the scene before them. The red carpet, the photographers, the steady stream of Nashville's elite entering the chapel. This wasn't the quiet family ceremony they'd expected to duck out of early. This was a statement. Mom pulled out her phone, probably trying to call me, while Jessica gestured wildly at Derek. From my vantage point 3 stories up, they looked like figures in a snow globe someone had just shaken violently. "Maya," Rachel said softly behind me, "it's time." I turned away from the window. Time to walk down an aisle lined with 200 people who'd come to celebrate Marcus and me. Time to say vows I'd written from the heart to a man who'd seen my worth when I was still learning to see it myself. Time to step into a version of myself I'd been quietly building for 28 years. The ceremony unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance. My father walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes, whether from pride, confusion, or regret. I couldn't tell. Mom dabbed at her face with tissues throughout the entire service. And Jessica sat in the third row, no longer the center of anyone's attention, watching her overlooked sister command a room full of people she'd never imagined Maya knew. When Marcus and I exchanged vows, our words weren't just promises to each other. They were declarations of the life we'd built together, the dreams we'd pursued, the quiet strength we'd cultivated away from spotlights and family drama. "I promise to see you," I said to Marcus, my voice carrying to every corner of the chapel, "the way you've always seen me." The reception began immediately after the ceremony, transforming the chapel grounds into an elegant garden party. The catered lunch featured dishes I'd only read about in magazines, prepared by the chef whose restaurant required 3-month advance reservations. At 3:15, I watched Mom approach Dad with an expression of pure panic. The conversation was brief, urgent, and ended with both of them looking toward Jessica, who was sitting at a table near the back, checking her phone repeatedly. They needed to leave for Jessica's ceremony. The one that would start in 45 minutes across town. The one where Jessica was expecting her family to witness her perfect day. But here's what none of them had anticipated. It's remarkably difficult to leave a social event of this magnitude early. When the mayor's wife is complimenting your daughter's wedding planning skills, when local news cameras are capturing the celebration, when your table companions include people whose names appear on buildings around the city, you don't just slip away quietly. At 3:30, Mom finally approached me near the cake table, where I was speaking with Charlotte Brennan from Good Morning Nashville. "Maya, sweetheart, we really need to..." She began, then stopped when she noticed the camera. "Mrs. Rodriguez." Charlotte beamed. "I was just telling Maya what a stunning event this is. You must be so proud." Yes, of course," Mom stammered. "Maya has always been very organized. The guest list alone is impressive. How did you manage to keep all this a secret?" "Well, Mom looked at me helplessly. "My family has always supported my independence," I said smoothly. "They taught me that sometimes the best gifts are the ones that surprise everyone." After Charlotte moved on to interview other guests, Mom grabbed my arm. "Maya, we need to talk. Jessica's ceremony is starting soon, and we promised." "Of course," I said. "You should go. But this is your wedding. And there are reporters here. And the mayor just asked me about your charity work." "Mom," I said gently, "I understand. You have commitments to Jessica."
Go.
"I'll be fine." She stood there, trapped between two daughters, two commitments, two very different versions of family loyalty. For the first time in my life, I watched my mother realize that her choices had consequences beyond the ones she'd been prepared to consider. She started, then looked around at the celebration surrounding us. At the guests who were toasting Marcus and me, at the photographers capturing every moment, at the life I'd built without her guidance or approval. "We can stay a little longer," she said finally. But Jessica's ceremony had already started. Across town, in the venue Jessica had chosen with a non-refundable deposit and the carefully planned timeline, the bride was walking down an aisle where the front row seats reserved for her parents remained empty. I learned this later from Rachel, who'd received frantic texts from mutual friends attending Jessica's wedding. How Jessica had delayed the processional for 20 minutes, hoping our parents would arrive. How Derek's family had whispered among themselves about the missing relatives. How Jessica had finally walked down the aisle with tears in her eyes, though no one was sure whether they were tears of joy or frustration. At my reception, Mom and Dad stayed until the very end. They danced to the band I'd hired, musicians they recognized from the Grand Ole Opry. They sampled cake from the baker who designed wedding confections for Nashville's elite. They posed for photos that would appear in next week's society pages. But most importantly, they watched. They watched me move through conversations with confidence they'd never seen before. They watched Marcus's family embrace me as the daughter they'd always wanted. They watched a room full of accomplished, interesting people celebrate a woman they'd somehow failed to recognize as their own daughter. The final twist came at 8 p.m. during the father-daughter dance. As Dad and I swayed to music that filled the perfectly decorated chapel, he leaned close and whispered something that changed everything. "Maya, I need to tell you something about Jessica's date choice." I looked up at him, this man who'd taught me to ride bikes and helped with math homework and somehow lost track of who I'd become along the way. "She knew," he said quietly, "about your date. She's known for months. And she chose the same day deliberately." The words hit me like cold water. Not an oversight. Not poor communication. Deliberate sabotage designed to force exactly the choice our parents had made, to prioritize Jessica's needs over mine, just like always. Why are you telling me this now? Because watching you today, seeing what you've accomplished, who you've become, I realized we failed you. And you succeeded anyway. We finished the dance in silence, though it wasn't empty silence anymore. It was the sound of a father finally seeing his daughter clearly, and a daughter finally understanding that some people's inability to recognize her worth said nothing about her value. The evening wound down with guests reluctantly departing, each person expressing amazement at the celebration and curiosity about how it had all come together. Business cards were exchanged, invitations extended, connections made that would last long beyond the wedding day. At 10 p.m., as Marcus and I stood alone in the chapel that had hosted our quiet revolution, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Congratulations on your wedding. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed my response. "I am. I hope you are too."
And I meant it.
Because here's what I'd learned in the quiet spaces between being overlooked and being seen. Holding on to anger only gives power to people who've already taken too much. Jessica would always be the golden child who needed spotlights and validation. I'd learned to create my own light. Marcus took my hand as we walked out of the chapel into the Nashville night. Tomorrow, we'd leave for our honeymoon in Italy. Next month, we'd move into the house we'd been saving for. Next year, we'd start the family we'd been dreaming about. But tonight, I was simply Maya Rodriguez Martinez, a woman who discovered that the most powerful word in the English language wasn't sorry or please or even love. It was understand. Because understanding meant recognizing when you'd been underestimated. Understanding meant accepting that some people would always see you as supporting cast. And understanding meant knowing when to step into the spotlight you'd been carefully preparing for your entire life. The quiet revolution wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition of my own worth, my own power, my own right to take up space in a world that had tried to keep me small. As we drove away from Belle Meade Chapel, Marcus squeezed my hand and smiled. "So," he said, "what's next for the woman who planned the social event of the year in 10 weeks?" I looked out at Nashville's skyline, this city that had witnessed my transformation from overlooked daughter to unforgettable bride. "Next," I said, "I think I'll run for city council." Because quiet didn't mean invisible anymore. And understanding had taught me that sometimes the best way to change the world was to start by changing your place in it. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and standing up for yourself? Sometimes our greatest power comes from the moments when we decide we're done being small. Share your story in the comments below. Which moment made you realize your own worth? And if this story resonated with your own experience of being underestimated, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of people who understand that quiet strength can move mountains.